The grand hall of the Galactic Council echoed with laughter. Not polite chuckles or restrained giggles, but deep, belly-shaking laughter that bounced off the crystalline walls. Hundreds of alien representatives from across the galaxy clutched their various body parts in amusement. Some rolled on the floor, others wiped tears from their eyes, or what passed for eyes in their species. The cause of this unprecedented mirth? A simple announcement from Earth's ambassador, who stood firmly at the podium despite the mockery. Earth had developed seventh-dimensional travel technology. Impossible, shouted a blue-skinned counselor between fits of laughter. They'd barely mastered 4D travel a decade ago. In the back of the hall, Captain James Walker clenched his fists but maintained his composure. As the commander of Earth's first 7D vessel, he had expected skepticism, but not this level of ridicule. Next to him, his first officer, Tom Reed, whispered, "Let them laugh, sir. They won't be laughing for long." The Earth ambassador raised his hands, trying to restore order. "We invite any observers to witness our first test flight next month," he announced, his voice steady despite the continuing chuckles and snorts. "Oh, we wouldn't miss it," called out another alien representative, triggering another wave of laughter. "Perhaps they'll accidentally discover the eighth dimension while they're at it." Back on Earth, preparations continued despite the galactic community's reaction. The Infinity's Edge sat in its dock, its smooth black hull absorbing light in strange ways. Unlike the bright, flashy ships of other species, this vessel looked more like a shadow given form. Its design broke every convention of space travel. Captain Walker walked through the ship's corridors, running his hand along the walls. The material felt both solid and not, a paradox made real through human ingenuity. The ship incorporated quantum consciousness technology, something other species had dismissed as impossible centuries ago. "Captain," called Dr. Anna White, the ship's head scientist. She hurried down the corridor, her tablet displaying complex equations. "The final tests on the dimensional core are complete. You need to see this." They made their way to the heart of the ship, where the 7D drive pulsed with a light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The engine room was filled with equipment that looked deceptively simple. No massive power cores like alien ships used, no huge energy reactors. Just elegant machinery that tapped into the fabric of reality itself. "Look at these readings," Dr. White said, pointing to her tablet. "The core isn't just bending space-time. Well, there's no other way to say it. It's thinking. The quantum consciousness integration worked better than we hoped." Walker smiled. This was why Earth had succeeded where others failed. While alien civilizations focused on brute force approaches to dimensional travel, humanity had taken a different path. They had discovered that consciousness itself was the key to higher dimensional manipulation. Outside the ship, a small group of alien observers had arrived early for the test flight. They walked around the vessel, scanning it with their advanced devices and making notes. Their dismissive attitudes were clear in their body language. "Such primitive materials," one commented, running a scanner over the hull. "They can't seriously believe this will achieve 7D travel." "Perhaps they misunderstood what dimensions are," another replied with a smirk. "They might think going up and down really fast counts as extra dimensions." Walker watched them from a viewport, remembering similar comments from throughout human history. They had said powered flight was impossible. They had said breaking the sound barrier would destroy an aircraft. They had said reaching the moon was a fool's dream. And now they said 7D travel was beyond humanity's grasp. "Status report," Walker called over the ship's comm system. "All systems nominal, Captain," Tom Reed responded from the bridge. "Core is stable, quantum fields are aligned, and consciousness integration is at 100%. We're ready whenever you are." Walker took one last look at the mocking aliens outside. Tomorrow, they would begin the test flights. Tomorrow, humanity would prove once again that the impossible was just a word invented by those who feared to try. "Get some rest, everyone," he ordered. "Tomorrow, we make history. Again." The Infinity's Edge sat silently in its dock, its dark hull seeming to ripple occasionally, as if the ship was already dancing between dimensions. Soon, very soon, the laughter would stop. The morning of the test flight arrived with perfect weather. Hundreds of alien observers gathered at the launch facility, their recording devices ready to document what they assumed would be a spectacular failure. The air buzzed with their excited chatter and barely hidden smirks. Captain Walker sat in his command chair on the Infinity's Edge, running through final checks. The bridge crew worked silently at their stations, each focused on their tasks. Through the view screens, they could see the gathering crowd of aliens below. "Core temperature stable," reported Tom Reed from his station. "Quantum consciousness field at full strength." Dr. White's voice came through the comm system from the engine room. "Captain, the 7D drive is responding better than expected. It's almost like it's eager to begin." Walker nodded. The ship did feel different today. The walls seemed to pulse with hidden energy, and even the air felt charged with possibility. All stations, final check-in. One by one, each section reported ready. The alien observers outside had fallen silent, watching as the ship's hull began to shimmer slightly, ripples of darkness flowing across its surface. "Launch control, this is Infinity's Edge. Requesting permission for test flight Alpha," Walker called out. "Permission granted, Infinity's Edge. Good luck. Try not to break too many laws of physics." Walker allowed himself a small smile at the controller's joke. Initiating 7D drive in 3, 2, 1. The world changed. There was no dramatic flash of light, no thunderous roar of engines. Instead, reality itself seemed to fold around the ship. The aliens watching from below gasped as the Infinity's Edge simply shifted. It didn't vanish or zoom away like their ships did. Instead, it began existing in multiple states at once. Inside the bridge, the crew watched in awe as their instruments showed something unprecedented. They weren't just moving through space-time. They were moving through layers of reality itself. "Captain," Dr. White's excited voice filled the bridge. "The quantum consciousness field is expanding beyond the ship. We're not just traveling through the dimensions. We're reading them, understanding them. The ship is translating higher dimensional physics into data we can comprehend." Walker watched as the normal view of space through the view screens was overlaid with new information. He could see gravity as waves of force, could perceive time as a physical dimension that could be navigated like any other. The ship wasn't just passing through these dimensions, it was teaching them how to see them. "Sir," Tom called out, his voice filled with wonder. "We're getting readings from, well, everywhere. And everyone. The ship's consciousness field is mapping dimensional pathways I didn't even know existed." Outside, the alien observers watched in stunned silence as the Infinity's Edge performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. It moved backwards in time while standing still in space. It existed in multiple locations simultaneously. It phased through solid matter, as if it weren't there. "How?" one alien scientist muttered, his recording device forgotten in his hand. "Their technology is so primitive. They shouldn't be able to." The test continued for an hour, though time became a relative concept around the ship. The crew discovered that the 7D drive didn't just move them through space-time. It allowed them to manipulate fundamental forces of the universe. "Watch this," Dr. White said, making an adjustment to the drive. A small bubble of altered space-time formed near the ship. Inside it, they could see galaxies being born and dying in seconds. "We can create localized time fields. We can literally watch the history of the universe unfold." The alien observers had stopped taking notes. Many had stopped pretending to understand what they were seeing. Their advanced sensors, designed to track ships through 4D and 5D space, couldn't even detect the Infinity's Edge anymore. As the ship finally returned to its starting position, settling back into normal space-time, silence fell over the launch facility. The alien observers stared at their useless instruments, then at the dark ship that had just rewritten their understanding of physics. Test flight alpha complete, Walker reported to launch control. All systems normal. Quantum consciousness field stable. Ready to begin analysis of collected data. Later that day, as the crew reviewed the test results, they received word that the alien observers had departed in a hurry. Their ships, once seen as the pinnacle of space travel technology, now seemed clumsy and primitive in comparison. "They're going to come back, you know," Tom said, looking at the data streams. "Once they realize what this means, they'll all want to know how we did it." Walker nodded, watching as the ship's hull continued to ripple with dimensional energies. "Let them come, but first, let's see just what else this ship can do." The age of human dimensional supremacy had begun, and the universe would never be the same. 3 months after Earth's successful demonstration of 7D technology, the galaxy faced its greatest threat. It began with silence. Dozens of outer colonies suddenly stopped communicating. Then came the desperate distress calls. In the Galactic Council's emergency session, panic filled the grand hall that had once echoed with laughter at humanity's expense. A massive hologram showed the path of destruction. A hostile fleet was advancing from the galactic core, destroying everything in its path. "They've already taken 6 major systems," announced the defense minister, his tentacles trembling. "Our best ships can't even get close to them. Their technology, it's like nothing we've seen before." Captain Walker stood at the back of the hall with Tom Reed, watching the proceedings. They had been invited as observers, a polite way of keeping Earth involved without actually asking for help. A hologram showed footage from the latest battle. The Council's mighty warships, capable of 4D and 5D travel, fired their most powerful weapons at the enemy vessels. But their attacks seemed to pass right through the hostile ships, as if they weren't fully present in normal spacetime. "Their ships exist partially in the 6th dimension," Dr. White whispered, analyzing the data on her tablet. "That's why conventional weapons can't touch them." Their phase shifted. The Council's greatest admiral stepped forward, his medals gleaming. "We've assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. 10,000 ships will meet them at the Centauri barrier. We will stop them there." Walker watched the alien leaders rally around this plan, noting how carefully they avoided looking at the Earth delegation. Pride still kept them from acknowledging the obvious solution. 3 days later, the news arrived. The Centauri barrier had fallen. The Council's fleet had been annihilated in less than an hour. The enemy ships had simply appeared inside their formation, ignoring all defensive screens and barriers. 8 billion dead or missing. Tom reported grimly, reading the latest updates. The Council's evacuation ships can't get people out fast enough. Their 4D jumps are too slow. In the Council chamber, the mood had shifted from panic to despair. The hologram now showed the enemy fleet splitting into 3 prongs, methodically working their way through populated systems. An alien representative finally stood up, their voice shaking. Perhaps we should consider asking Earth for—" "No," the defense minister interrupted. "We cannot rely on their experimental technology. Their one ship, their primitive understanding of dimensions. It would be suicide." Walker had heard enough. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chamber. "That primitive technology is the only thing in this galaxy that can match what your enemy is using. While you've been arguing, we've been preparing." The chamber fell silent as Walker displayed a new hologram. It showed the Infinity's Edge, but now it was joined by 2 sister ships, the Reality's Dawn and the Dimension's Edge. 3 ships, each incorporating the lessons learned from the test flights. "Our ships can track them through dimensional space," Walker continued. "We can engage them on their own terms, but if you want our help, you need to ask for it properly." The Council members looked at each other, centuries of prejudice warring with desperate need. The defense minister opened his mouth to object, but another explosion rocked the chamber. The enemy fleet had just destroyed another nearby system. Finally, the Council leader stood. His voice, once so full of mockery, now carried a note of humility. "Captain Walker, on behalf of the Galactic Council, We request Earth's assistance in this crisis. Walker nodded gravely. Request accepted. But we do this our way. No interference, no demands, no second-guessing our methods. Within hours, the 3 Earth ships prepared for departure. The Council watched in confused silence as each ship was loaded not with weapons, but with additional quantum consciousness processors and dimensional sensors. They're powering up their drives, an alien technician reported, watching his instruments. But these readings don't make sense. The energy levels are far beyond what we saw in the test flight. Dr. White smiled from her station on the infinity's edge. We've been busy these past months. The ships don't just travel through dimensions now. They can reshape them. As the 3 ships lifted off, their hulls rippling with dimensional energy, Captain Walker sent one final message to the Council. Watch and learn. This is how humanity fights a war. The ships vanished, not with the flashy jump effects of alien vessels, but with a subtle folding of reality itself. They left behind a chamber full of silent aliens, all thinking the same thing. Perhaps they had underestimated humanity after all. The real test of Earth's 7D technology was about to begin, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The 3 Earth ships emerged from dimensional space near the outer edge of the Proxima system, just as the enemy fleet began its attack. Through their advanced sensors, they watched as 50 enemy vessels tore through the system's defenses like paper. Infinity's edge to reality's dawn and dimension's edge. Captain Walker's voice was calm despite the destruction unfolding before them. Remember your training. These ships may be advanced, but they're only using the 6th dimension. We have the advantage. The enemy noticed them. Of course they did. 3 small ships, barely visible against the backdrop of space, daring to approach their unstoppable fleet. The massive enemy vessels turned, their hulls shifting between dimensions in a display meant to intimidate. They're trying to communicate, Tom reported from his station. Audio only. A harsh, mechanical voice filled the bridge. Your primitive vessels are no match for our power. Retreat or be destroyed like the others. Walker smiled. It was exactly what they had expected. Arrogance, just like they had faced from the Council. Dr. White, are you ready to show them what primitive looks like? Ready, Captain. Quantum consciousness field at maximum. All 3 ships are synchronized. The enemy fleet fired their weapons. Beams of energy that phased between dimensions, impossible to dodge or block by normal means. They had destroyed thousands of ships with these weapons. But today was different. The 3 Earth ships didn't try to dodge. Instead, they expanded their consciousness fields, creating a bubble of controlled space-time around themselves. The enemy weapons passed through empty space. The Earth ships now existed a fraction of a second away from the present moment. Phase 1, Walker ordered. The Infinity's edge moved first, its hull rippling as it accessed the full power of the 7D drive. Reality bent around it as the ship existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The enemy fleet's sensors couldn't track it. To them, the ship was everywhere and nowhere. Reality's dawn and dimension's edge split off, creating a triangle formation around the enemy fleet. Their synchronized quantum fields began to reshape the fabric of space-time itself. Sir, an enemy commander shouted, we can't phase shift. Something's locking us into normal space. The Earth ships had created a dimensional cage, forcing the enemy vessels to exist in a single state. Their greatest advantage, the ability to shift between dimensions, was gone. But Walker and his crew weren't done. Phase 2, he commanded. Dr. White's fingers flew over her console, initiating dimensional inversion. The space around the enemy fleet began to fold, not in the crude way their 6D technology worked, but with the precise control that only 7D technology allowed. The enemy ships found themselves trapped in a pocket of warped space-time, where the laws of physics became suggestions. What's happening? The enemy commander demanded, panic creeping into their mechanical voice. Our weapons are passing through your ships like they're not even there. That's because we're not there. Walker responded calmly. We're operating from the seventh dimension, where time and space are just options. You're stuck in a dimensional loop of our creation. The enemy fleet tried to escape, their engines straining against the dimensional barriers. But they were trapped in a space where every direction led back to the center, where time moved differently for each ship, where their advanced technology meant nothing. Final phase, Walker ordered. The 3 Earth ships synchronized their quantum fields one last time. The bubble of warped space-time began to collapse, not violently, but with precise control. Enemy ships found themselves aging thousands of years in seconds, their metal hulls rusting and crumbling. Others were caught in time loops, repeating the same moment over and over. Some simply ceased to exist as they were gently moved into a dimension where matter couldn't survive. In less than 5 minutes, the entire enemy fleet was gone. No explosions, no dramatic battles, no debris field. Just empty space where 50 of the most advanced ships in the galaxy had been. The 3 Earth ships powered down their 7D drives, their hulls settling back into normal spacetime. Around them, the fabric of reality smoothed itself out, erasing all traces of the dimensional manipulation they had performed. Status report, Walker called out. All ships reporting nominal, Captain, Tom replied. Quantum field stable. No damage. No casualties. Dr. White looked up from her readings. Sir, the Galactic Council is requesting a full report on what just happened. Their sensors, well, they couldn't make sense of any of it. Walker looked at the empty space where the enemy fleet had been. Tell them we'll explain later. Right now, we have more ships to catch. The enemy's main fleet is about to learn that humanity doesn't take kindly to bullies, no matter how advanced they think they are. The 3 ships vanished again, leaving behind a very important lesson. Sometimes the quietest victories are the most devastating. News of the first battle spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The main enemy fleet, over 500 ships strong, halted their advance. For the first time, they showed signs of uncertainty. 3 small Earth vessels had destroyed 50 of their best ships without firing a single conventional weapon. But their leaders were not ready to admit defeat. They gathered their forces, preparing for what they believed would be the final battle to crush these upstart humans. On the bridge of the Infinity's edge, Captain Walker studied the tactical display. The enemy fleet had arranged themselves in a complex 3-dimensional formation, one designed to counter the techniques used in the previous battle. They're learning, Tom observed. They've modified their ships to operate on multiple dimensional frequencies. They think they can match our 7D capability. Dr. White laughed softly from her station. They still don't understand. They're trying to brute force their way through dimensions. That's not how our technology works. The 3 Earth ships approached the waiting enemy fleet. This time, there would be no demands for surrender, no warnings. The enemy opened fire immediately, their weapons now splitting into multiple dimensional phases. They've adapted their weapons, Tom reported, trying to hit us across several dimensions at once. Walker nodded calmly. Then it's time to show them what 7D technology can really do. Dr. White, initiate protocol origami. The name was deceptively simple, but what happened next defied conventional physics. The 3 Earth ships activated their quantum consciousness fields at full power, but this time, they weren't just manipulating space-time. They were rewriting it. Space itself began to fold like paper, creating complex patterns that the human mind could barely comprehend. The enemy fleet found their carefully planned formation twisted into impossible shapes. Sir, Dr. White called out, excitement in her voice. The quantum field is accepting the new parameters. We can proceed with the full demonstration. Walker stood from his command chair, watching as reality bent to human will. Execute. The Infinity's edge took point, its 7D drive pulsing with power that made the fabric of space-time ripple. Around them, dimensions began to stack and fold like pages in a book. Enemy ships suddenly found themselves trapped between dimensional layers. Some were caught between seconds, frozen in time. Others experienced time at different rates, Their crews aged centuries while their weapons fired in slow motion. "They're trying to escape through dimensional jumps," Tom reported. "Let them try," Walker responded. "Show them what happens when you try to run from a 7D field." As enemy ships attempted to flee, they discovered a horrifying truth. Every dimensional pathway they took led them right back to the trap. The Earth ships had created a closed loop in reality itself. Reality's dawn and dimension's edge moved into position, their quantum fields synchronizing with the infinity's edge. Together, they began the final phase of protocol origami. Space folded again, but this time it folded inward, creating a cascade of dimensional collapse. Enemy ships were pulled into spaces between dimensions, places where physics itself broke down. "Warning," the ship's AI announced. "Multiple dimensional fractures detected in enemy vessels. Their attempt to match our dimensional travel is causing their ships to tear apart." Through their view screens, the crew watched as the mighty enemy fleet faced something worse than destruction: impossibility. Ships split across multiple dimensions, their matter scattered across different layers of reality. Others imploded as they tried to exist in spaces that couldn't support them. The enemy's final transmission was cut short as their flagship encountered a paradox of its own making: trying to exist in too many dimensions at once without the protective quantum consciousness field that made Earth's technology work. In less than 10 minutes, the battle was over. No debris field marked the enemy's passing. No wreckage floated in space. The ships had been folded out of normal spacetime, their matter and energy scattered across dimensions humans could barely name. "Status report," Walker called out, though he already knew the answer. "All enemy ships accounted for," Tom replied. They're everywhere and nowhere, sir. The dimensional folds worked exactly as designed." Dr. White looked up from her readings. "Captain, the quantum consciousness field is showing something interesting. The space where the enemy fleet was, it's been permanently altered. They didn't just lose this battle. They lost their place in reality itself." Walker nodded solemnly. "The power they wielded was enormous, perhaps too enormous. But the enemy had left them no choice. Sometimes, to save the galaxy, you had to fold it first. Send word to the Council," he ordered. "Tell them it's over. And tell them that Earth is ready to teach those who are willing to learn. Properly this time." The 3 ships turned away from the dimensionally scared battlefield, leaving behind a lesson that would echo through spacetime itself. Never underestimate a species that thinks in 7 dimensions. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was silent, not the mocking silence of before, nor the fearful silence during the enemy's advance. This was a silence of awe and revelation. On the massive holographic display, recordings of the final battle played in loop, though most of what happened was beyond their sensors' ability to capture. Captain Walker stood at the podium where, months ago, Earth's ambassador had been laughed at. No one was laughing now. The council members leaned forward in their seats, many taking notes, others simply staring in wonder. "The enemy fleet wasn't destroyed in the conventional sense," Walker explained, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Their ships and crews still exist, but they're spread across dimensional spaces we can't easily access. Think of it as a prison built from reality itself." One of the senior council members raised a trembling hand. "And this protocol origami, as you called it, how did you even conceive of such a thing?" Dr. White stepped forward, holding up a simple piece of paper. The council watched as she folded it into a complex shape. "You see space-time as rigid, something to be broken through with brute force. We saw it as flexible, something that could be folded and shaped. The quantum consciousness field simply allows us to do this on a universal scale." The defense minister, who had so strongly opposed asking Earth for help, stood up. I owe humanity an apology. We called your technology primitive. We mocked your methods. And yet, you've achieved what our civilizations couldn't imagine in thousands of years." Tom Reed, manning the holographic controls, showed new footage: the dimensional scars left behind by the battle. These marks in spacetime will remain for centuries, he explained, a reminder of what happens when technology is pushed too far without proper understanding. The council leader cleared his throat. Captain Walker, humanity has proven itself beyond any doubt. We would be honored if Earth would share its knowledge of 7D technology with the council races. Walker looked around the chamber, seeing the eager faces of species that had once dismissed humanity as barely worth noticing. We will share our knowledge, he said finally, but not all at once, and not with everyone. Those who wish to learn must prove they understand the responsibility that comes with this power. Dr. White stepped forward again. We've prepared a basic curriculum. It starts with quantum consciousness theory and works up from there. But understand this, you can't brute force your way through dimensions anymore. This technology requires a completely different way of thinking. The recordings continued to play, showing how the Earth ships had folded spacetime like origami, trapping the enemy fleet in dimensional pockets. Many council members winced, finally understanding the true gap between their technology and Earth's. We've established the Earth Dimensional Academy, Walker announced. Those races who wish to learn will send their best scientists and engineers. But be warned, it's not just about building better ships. It's about understanding the very fabric of reality in a new way. A younger council member spoke up. But the enemy, could they return? Could they find a way out of the dimensional prison? Tom shook his head. The dimensional folds are maintained by constant quantum field interactions. It's like a lock where the key is the structure of reality itself. Without understanding 7D technology, they can't even begin to escape. The council chambers erupted in discussion, representatives from hundreds of worlds all talking at once. Some were already volunteering their people for the academy. Others were debating the implications of this new power balance in the galaxy. Walker watched it all with a slight smile. Humanity had done more than win a war. They had changed the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. There will be challenges ahead, he said, silencing the chamber once more. Some will try to misuse this knowledge. Others will resist the changes it brings. But Earth stands ready to guide the galaxy into a new age of dimensional science. Dr. White activated one final hologram. Plans for a new type of ship, one designed to explore dimensions beyond even the seventh. And this is just the beginning, she said softly. There are more dimensions waiting to be discovered, more ways to fold reality that we haven't even imagined yet. The council session ended with a standing ovation, not for humanity's victory in battle, but for the promise of what was to come. As the Earth delegation prepared to leave, the council leader approached Walker privately. You could have used this power to dominate the galaxy, he said quietly. Instead, you choose to teach and share. Walker smiled. That's the real difference between us and your enemy. They saw power as a way to control reality. We saw it as a way to understand it. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. 5 years after the Dimensional War, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Earth Dimensional Academy had become the most prestigious scientific institution in known space, its waiting list spanning hundreds of worlds. The once laughable humans were now the teachers of the galaxy's brightest minds. Captain Walker, now Admiral Walker, stood in the observation dome of the new Earth space station, Infinity's Point. Below him, ships of various designs moved through space, some using traditional engines, others practicing basic dimensional folding under careful supervision. Another successful graduation day, Tom said, joining him at the window. As the Academy's chief instructor, he had personally overseen the training of thousands of alien students. How many made it through this time? Walker asked, watching a student ship attempt its first controlled dimensional fold. 23 species represented, 48 graduates total, Tom replied. Still only a 2% pass rate. Turns out understanding 7-dimensional physics isn't easy, even with our teaching methods. Dr. White appeared from a nearby dimensional fold, having mastered the art of personal dimensional travel. "The new research team from the core worlds just arrived," she announced. "They're still struggling with the basic concept that you can't force dimensions to obey you." Walker nodded. Some species, especially those with highly advanced traditional technology, found it hardest to adapt to Earth's methods. Their preconceptions about how space-time worked often got in the way of true understanding. Below them, a massive ship emerged from a perfectly executed dimensional fold. It was the Reality's Dream, the newest Earth vessel, designed to explore dimensions beyond the seventh. Its hull rippled with possibilities, existing in multiple states simultaneously. "Remember when they laughed at us?" Tom asked, watching the ship demonstrate its capabilities to a group of awestruck alien observers. "Hard to forget," Walker replied. "Though I prefer where we are now, teaching rather than fighting." The station's quantum consciousness field hummed softly, maintaining a bubble of controlled space-time around the facility. In the distance, the dimensional scars from the Great Battle had become a tourist attraction, though only authorized ships could approach them safely. A group of alien students passed by, deep in discussion about quantum consciousness theory. They bowed respectfully to the three humans who had changed the galaxy's understanding of reality itself. "Admiral," a young officer called out, hurrying up to them. "The council representatives have arrived for the demonstration." Walker checked the time. "Ah yes, the unveiling of the public transportation network. Dr. White, would you like to do the honors?" Dr. White smiled and activated her console. Around the galaxy, thousands of newly installed dimensional gates hummed to life. These were humanity's gift to the galaxy, safe, control points of dimensional travel that any ship could use, regardless of their technology level. "The network is online," she reported. "All gates showing green status. We're ready to begin public operations." On hundreds of worlds, people watched as the first commercial ships entered the dimensional gates. Travel times between stars dropped from weeks to seconds. Trade routes that once took months could now be completed in hours. "We've received the first reports," Tom said, reading from his tablet. "All ships have arrived safely at their destinations. The network is functioning perfectly." Walker watched as more ships entered the gates, each one proof that humanity's gift to the galaxy was being embraced. "Not bad for a species that supposedly couldn't handle dimensional travel," he mused. Dr. White pulled up another hologram, showing the plans for their next project. "The Council has approved our proposal for the Dimensional Research Institute. We'll be able to explore the higher dimensions safely, with representatives from all species working together." "And the old enemy?" Tom asked quietly. "Still secure in their dimensional prison," Walker assured him. "Though some of their descendants have applied to the Academy. They want to understand where their ancestors went wrong." The three of them stood in comfortable silence, watching the busy space lanes below. Humanity had done more than master dimensional travel. They had changed how an entire galaxy thought about reality itself. "You know what the best part is?" Dr. White said suddenly. "We're still just beginning. There are more dimensions to explore, more ways to fold reality, more wonders to discover." Walker smiled. "And this time, we'll discover them together, not as conquerors or rivals, but as students of the universe itself." As if to emphasize his words, another ship successfully completed its dimensional fold, its crew celebrating their achievement. In the distance, the Reality's Dream prepared for its first mission beyond the seventh dimension, carrying a crew made up of multiple species, all trained in Earth's methods. The galaxy had entered a new era, one where the laughter had stopped, replaced by wonder and respect. And humanity, once dismissed as primitive, led the way into dimensions unknown. Sometimes, Walker reflected, the best revenge against mockery isn't violence or dominance, but simply showing others a better way forward. The future stretched before them, infinite in its possibilities, waiting to be folded into new and beautiful shades. The story of humanity's rise to dimensional mastery had become legend, but the real story, the story of teaching, learning, and growing together, was only just beginning.